Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to do a little bit of work on some ankle mechanics and ankle mobility. For this one, all we're going to need is a lacrosse ball and a foam roller. Super simple in terms of what you actually need to do this one. In this one, we're going to work a little bit on kind of some plantar fascia stuff and some calf release and then some mechanics at the ankle afterwards. So first off, super simple, all we're going to start with is working on releasing our calves. So for this one, we've got two options. You can use the foam roller. This is going to be a little bit larger area that you work, so there's a little bit less pinpoint pressure. For a little bit more intense release, you can use the lacrosse ball. Either of them work just as well. You want to kind of shoot for about a 6 out of 10 in terms of kind of the discomfort scale of things. You don't want to be crying on the floor in pain, but you want to have it be fairly uncomfortable. So for me, I've been working on this one a lot, so I'm going to use the lacrosse ball. But if the lacrosse ball seems a little too much, you can use a foam roller, works just as well. So the way we're going to do this one, we're going to add one leg on top of that lacrosse ball or a foam roller. And then if you want to add a little extra pressure, you can stack the other leg on top. Otherwise, you can just kind of keep it off to the side for a little bit of balance. And then all we're doing is we're putting pressure in place onto that ball. And we're going to go through slow range of motion, doing a nice ankle circle. So we're trying to add pressure to the ball and we're trying to move through range of motion, getting that muscle sliding back and forth over top of that ball. So with this one, we're going to work our way, kind of starting about 2/3 of the way down the leg, working our way up the back of the calf to just behind the knee. Then we're going to rotate to about 45 degrees. We're going to work to the inside of the calf, and then we'll rotate to the outside, and we'll work to the outside. So you just want to work kind of the top 2/3 of the leg. Down here, we're going to just get into our Achilles tendon, and you're not going to be able to do a ton of work with the ball. So just keep it at the top 2/3 of the leg. It should take you about 2 minutes per side. So kind of 45 seconds on one side, maybe 30 seconds in the middle, another 45 on the outside. You can kind of play around. If one area seems worse, spend a little more time there. A lot of times the inside will be bad and the outside won't be, or vice versa. So whatever feels more uncomfortable, spend some more time kind of working those hot spots. So we'll do that one. We're going to do kind of 2 minutes on each side. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to work plantar fascia. So we're moving to the other side of the ankle joint, and we're going to work out some of this tissue on the very bottom of our foot. So the way we'll do this one is we're going to set that ball in place, and starting kind of just underneath the ball of the foot, we're going to work back and forth, applying pressure. And as we go back and forth, try to let that kind of foot articulate back and forth over the ball. So if you're going to look straight on, when I'm pushing here, I'm letting that whole foot tip to the outside. And as I come across, the foot's flexing the other way. So I'm working back and forth that way. And then I'm slowly working my way down the foot. So from the toes, slowly working my way towards the heel. And then when I get about halfway, it's going to get hard to go any farther. So then I'm going to switch. I'm going to use the ball of my foot as the pivot point. And then I'm going to work back and forth that way. Same thing, slowly working my way towards the heel. This one should take you about a minute to work down the full length of your foot. And then once we get just kind of to that heel, you'll feel all of a sudden it gets pretty bony right on that heel. When you get there, there's no point in working anymore because we're just working on bone, so we stop when we get to that point. The next one we're going to do, we're going to use our fingers for this release. The balls are usually a little too big, so it's hard to get in there. So next one we're going to work on is going to be our tibialis posterior. So that's just to the inside of the leg. And the way we're going to find this one is we're going to find the shin bone just at the front here. And if you kind of find, like if you tap with your fingers, you'll feel there's a solid bone right at the front. So if we work just to the inside, it'll be solid bone, solid bone, solid bone, and then you'll feel like it kind of drops off into the muscle. So that's the spot we want to work. And we're starting almost up, just kind of just below the knee. So we're going to find this spot where it feels like the bone drops off, and that muscle we're trying to get to actually attaches underneath, kind of inside there. So we're trying to really get in pretty deep with our fingers. And then just like the calf release we were just doing, we're going to push in with those fingers. So you can either use a thumb. I find a thumb is nice. Some people like to come across with fingers. So you can use a thumb, or you can even kind of stack your hands this way. So we're going to apply pressure, and then same thing, we're moving through that range of motion. So instead of doing the circles, this time we're applying our pressure, and we're going to work on coming in and out with that foot. So moving through our range there, applying pressure, moving in and out. And this one we're going to start from kind of just below the knee. This one we can work all the way down, even to kind of almost kind of at the ankle joint here. So you can work all the way down there and just kind of following. The bone runs down here and we want to come just behind the bone and work our way all the way down. So it should take you 1 to 2 minutes on each side. You're going to work your way all the way down, switch over, same thing opposite side, working your way all the way down. Last release we're going to work on is going to be our tibialis anterior, so muscle just down the front of the shin here. For this one, we're going to use our trusty lacrosse ball again. And this one, the way I like to work on it is I'm going to apply pressure with the ball and I'm going to kind of lace my fingers together. So I'm going to lace them here, apply pressure with that ball, and then I'm going to go through range of motion. So I'm pointing my toes and then pulling my toes back up towards my knee. So pointing and coming back up to the knee. And this one we're slowly going to work our way down the leg. You don't want to work right up on the knee because that's just going to be bone, but just below where that bone is, you'll feel where that muscle starts. So kind of ball right here, fingers laced, and you can add quite a bit of pressure on this one, and we're just going through that range of motion, pointing our toes, move down to a little lower spot, and then just working through that range, moving down again. And then we've got 2 last things that we're going to work on. So now that we've kind of released all these different muscles around the ankle joint, what we're going to work on is actually getting that joint moving a little better. So a lot of times, especially when you're out there doing a ton of volume, running a lot, everything kind of starts to get really stiff and tight and kind of stuck down. So we're going to work on trying to kind of get that joint moving a little better now that these muscles have been loosened up a tiny bit. So the 2 mobility things we're going to work on here, if you kind of think about the ankle joint, we've actually got 3 bones that stack on top of each other for the ankle joint, and there's actually 2 joints in there. So we've got one joint that's on the very bottom of that ankle, and that joint gives us our inversion and eversion, so rolling to the inside and outside. The next joint on top of that is the one that gives us our flexion and extension, so actually being able to point our toes. So with a combo of those 2 different joints, one of them goes in and out, the other one goes front and back. That's what actually gives us the ability to do that circular range of motion. So we're going to do kind of one thing to work on mobility for each of those joints. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to start at the bottom. So we're going to work on the joint down here, and we're going to use our foam roller for this one. You can set up a whole bunch of ways for this one. I find just kind of getting everything in front of myself here, I've got enough hip mobility that I can work on it right here. If that's pretty tough for you, you can actually just work on it this way. So you can kind of come up a little more on your knee and you can set your leg that way. But I find if you've got the hip mobility for it, working on it this way is going to be the best. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our ankle joint and we're going to try and get it right on top of the roller. So we've kind of got the bone of our ankle is sitting kind of just on top of the middle of the roller. And then what I'm going to work on here is I'm going to take my left hand, I'm going to grab my heel, and I'm going to work on applying pressure downwards here. So I'm pushing down into that joint, and I'm trying to get it kind of rotating to the outside a little bit. Right elbow is going to sit on my knee so that when I push, my leg doesn't just pivot and teeter-totter over top of the foam roller. So I'm kind of holding myself down here, and then I can put quite a bit of force in here, and it's not going to seem like you're actually moving that joint very much. But we just want a little bit of extra mobility there. So we're going to do 25 to 30, just pushing down and then relaxing it. And just trying to get a little extra mobility kind of in that lower joint in the ankle. So you can kind of grab the heel and think about almost twisting it to the outside. So that's the first joint. Second joint we're going to work on a little bit of kind of plantar flexion and dorsiflexion at the ankle here. And the way we're going to work on this one is we're going to set that foot in place. We're going to apply pressure on the leg here, and we're going to work on moving forwards. And then we're going to come back and take that tension off. We're coming forwards and taking tension off. So I switch over. If you kind of look from the other side, what we really want to focus on here is keeping that arch up as much as possible. So if I let that arch collapse inwards, all of a sudden that ankle joint is kind of changing position. And if we are a little restricted in that ankle joint, it's not going to actually help increase our mobility. So we want to make sure we've got the ball of our foot, the outside of our foot, and our heel. So we've almost got like a little tripod on the ground here. So we're planted nice and firm. We've got this foot coming up in a nice arch, and I should be able to almost stick kind of the first joint or so of my finger underneath there as that arch is engaged. So foot is kind of a little bit engaged, arch is up, and then as I come forward, I'm focusing on not letting that foot collapse down, and you'll kind of feel a bit of restriction kind of in that ankle or a little bit of a stretch in the calf, and come back. So that's what we're going for, is keeping that arch up as we go forward and backward. And with this one, you can add more and more force. You can push with both hands. Or if that feels like a lot, you can kind of just push with the one hand and work your way back and forth. But we're really focusing on keeping everything in nice straight alignment, so we're not letting that foot collapse in. So if I let that foot collapse, I can get way farther forwards, but it's not actually working on that ankle mobility. So these are kind of a couple quick things you guys can do. Kind of work on releasing some of that tightness, increasing a little bit of mobility in those stiff ankles, and hopefully you guys can kind of apply that on a day-to-day basis. This one's one of those things you can do if you've got an issue in this area. You can do this every single day. Not one of those things that you need to take a recovery day afterwards because we didn't do any strength with it. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think.